Arts and cultural heritage funding for the production of Remembering the Vietnam War was provided by a vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The voices of our veterans, remembering the Vietnam War.
This is Rebel 6, request jump stop. Test stop, over.
He said, "You're the first one to be shot." And that was quite an impression on me.
Type of injury, aspersion, shrapnel wound.
When one of the 122s blew up, you could put a Jeep in the hole and not see the top of it.
They will identify with smoke.
I honestly was scared for a year.
The area is insecure.
I counted the days until I could get out of there.
Yankee uniform. 144.
You never get your soul back.
The first thing you're afraid of is, is that step. The next one I take, is that going to be the end of it? You never know. And so you're walking on your tiptoes and just, looking down all the time and trying to figure out, and stuff. Then you see the guys that have been there for 7 months, they just tromping through it because after a while, you just don't care.
There was a couple of battalions of North Vietnamese over there firing at us, and so we had a lot of took a lot of casualties on the way in, and I wasn't with my hillbilly buddy. He was with a different gun team at the time, and through the smoke and everything, I can't remember how everybody got. My gun team, the guys on my gun team were killed, and so I was the team leader at the time, and so there I am without a gun team and that. So my friend Huggins, the hillbilly, he comes back and he's got his clothes kind of burnt off from white phosphorus from an air spotter, and he's in tatters. He looks like a hobo. And we grabbed up a machine. He grabbed a gun. I grabbed a bunch of ammo off the dead, and we went out on the very far right-hand side. And we were down to maybe like 30 rounds or 20 rounds in the machine gun. And I'd fired off pretty much all of my ammo out of my M16. And he says, "Okay, Bobby," he says, "when I start firing," he says, "you go." And so he gets up on one knee and starts shooting. And I get up about this far, and the gun jams. All of a sudden, it's just quiet. And I fall face down to get back down there, and I feel something ripping through my back. And I thought, son of a gun. It was warm, running down my back and everything, but it didn't hurt. But then I kind of thought, flashed through my mind, well, you don't always feel it either, So then I reached up and I looked like that, and it's all full of mud and sand, and it was my peaches that I had in my backpack, and I had stitched my whole backpack while I was laying down across, and I said, "I think you better get that thing shooting, because I'm going to get out of here," So he started again, and I got back about halfway when they fired a rocket or something like that, and it kind of picked me up and knocked me down, and kind of broke my leg and stuff like that, So they come out and they dragged me over to this hump, and they had all the wounded over there to medevac.
We were on patrol, and my friend Dog was on point. I was behind him, and we had to go in. I headed back to our hill, and we came to a fork in what do you call it? And he said, "Which one do I take?" Being there for 8 months, I said, "It doesn't matter. They're both booby trapped. Just pick one." So he did, and they were. He walked away from it. I was walking towards it. He got up and down his legs, and I got it in my left inner thigh. I mean, inner thigh is close. I got it. I had my jugular vein severed in half. I had a collapsed lung, which was medical terms hemo and pneumothorax, and that was pretty much it. But they thought I had a back injury because I couldn't lay flat. That was because of collapsed lung.
I got medevaced out in one of the last choppers because I wasn't bleeding. My leg was just broken, and I went out with the dead. And as we took altitude, it cools off really fast. You go from 110 to about 50 degrees, and my teeth were chattering. I was laying there, and my gunner that was killed right off the bat, they had a poncho over him, and as we got up, it got windy, and the poncho blew off, and he was kind of looking at me. His eyes were looking at me, you know.
I lost four guys there, and I see two of them splattered on the wall quite a few times during the day. They took a direct mortar round.
People around you are getting shot, and you're not. There's a lot of guilt there. They call it the survivor's guilt. Why them and not me? You have to, I guess, believe in a higher power. It's not your turn to go.
When the battle was over, so to speak, this all happened at night, of course, and that's when the enemy would more often strike. In the command post on the fire support base, I had to help load the body bags onto the medevac chopper, and that memory will always be with me, and that was bad.
So I was in the hospital. For that wound, they cut all my clothes off me and bandaged me up and everything like that, and patched me up. And I remember the priest came in and got some information. And little did I know what happened is I had gotten married in the process. So they did. My wife was in Orange County, California, living with her sister while I was overseas. And so the Marine Corps sent two officers out to my parents' house. And my mother answers the door, and they said, "We're looking for Judith Gaskill, next of kin." And my mother said, "Well, she's with her sister. What, was he hurt? Was he wounded? What?" He says, "I can't say until we notify the next of kin." So my mother spends like the first 20 hours or so they get hold of Judy to find out I was just wounded, So, but the next time I was wounded was only, not too far from that same area. We had another operation later, several months later, and I was wounded by a grenade fragment, and that. And I remember they brought me in the hospital, and they kind of did the same thing. And the father comes out and "Well, I'd like to get some information." I says, no information at all. I said, "I'm not going to tell you who anything is. Last time my parents just about had heart attacks, So
when I received my orders to leave country, that was the happiest moment of my life back then. I was going home. Once I got on the plane and I got in the air, then all this regret of leaving my buddies behind, and me thinking that how the hell are they going to survive without me? It just took up my whole time on that whole plane.
There's 200 guys coming off an airplane kissing the tarmac, the runway. We're so happy to be back in America. And that day I got discharged from the Army that day. And I got back to Minneapolis at 6 o'clock on January 12th, again 6 o'clock in the evening, and it was 31 below. And so it was a 100-degree temperature change for me, but I was so happy.
Then a bunch of cabs came in back of the air terminal where we were getting out and picked us up and told us, "Get that uniform off as fast as you can." I told them, "I don't have no other clothes. This is all I have right now. Everything else is like in a locker." I said, "As soon as I can get to my locker, I'll get out of the uniform." And I heard that a lot. I went out in Los Angeles, and a guy told me, he said, don't tell nobody you just got back from Vietnam. He says, keep your mouth shut and let your hair grow, because we didn't have long hair like a lot of them out there had. And they knew that you were in the military if you had a short hair.
Well, I came home Christmas Eve day of 1971, December 24th, and I can remember in 68, 69, even 1970, a lot of the veterans that were coming home from Vietnam were treated very, very poorly by our citizens. Of course, there was our nation was divided on the war, and a lot of the people took it out on the warrior and not our elected officials that sent us the war. They were called baby killers, and they were treated poorly at the airports when they returned from combat from Vietnam.
We got spit on and things thrown at us. The officials at the Army base said you should go back in your civilian clothes. Well, I didn't have any civilian clothes then. They just came back from the jungle. And if you flew back, you got to fly back military standby, but you had to have your uniform on. And it was really kind of ugly to come back knowing that you did the duty that you were supposed to. Or I got called. I was in the service, and had people call you a lot of ugly names and spit at you and yell at you, and like, this isn't right. You shouldn't be yelling or spitting at us. You should be at the powers to be that got us in this mess.
When I did finally come home, yeah, there was you get into the airport and you get out of your military clothing, get into civic, because you hear about and see what's been going on. It's hard to believe that people were treated that way, but everybody has a right to their opinion. But yeah.
So after I got back, I was just discharged and went back to my civilian life, and I had a kind of hard time being a civilian, just because there was light discipline in Vietnam, so there was no lights at night. You're out in the bush and there was no lights or anything. You just live with the sunrise and sunset. So coming back to the United States with all those lights and all the activity and everything, and the music was all different, and in Vietnam we just listened to pop music, through the military station. But back here that was, Jimi Hendrix and just all the music that was real different. And Dick Cavett, I remember seeing Dick Cavett when I got back, and I said, "Oh, who's this guy?" So and we went to the moon while I was over there. So you miss a lot, of the cultural flow of America.
Coming home was like when I first went to Nam. It was just everything had changed so much that people they weren't too crazy about us at all. When I got off the plane, when I de-roased out of Seattle, they told us to get to the airport. Don't be loitering around, just get to the airport. But when there'd be 3 or 4 of us sitting at a table at the airport, or go in there to sit at a table, and people would get up and move away from us.
We didn't get a lot of the news in Vietnam about all the protesters, and people say, "Oh, they spit on me." Did anybody spit at you when you came home? Well, they flew us into San Francisco about 3 o'clock in the morning, which I think they did intentionally so that most of the protesters would be home in bed. But I said, well, you didn't see me in jail, so nobody spit on me.
Worst thing was silence. Dead silence. I told one person or a couple of people I had been in Vietnam, and it was dead silence. And after that, silence was just as bad as the protests. So, and it was protests all around. So no, I didn't. I just disappeared.
I remember coming over on the bus, coming down the Duluth skyline. I saw Duluth all lit up and everything, and I thought, wow, this is really pretty. And so I was happy, and my wife's whole family, most of them worked at Elliott's meat packing company. So I hung around the house for 3 or 4 days, and then my wife told me, "Oh, I got you a job." I said, "What?" She said, "I found a job for you. My dad says to go down to Elliott's and fill the paperwork out, you'll start." So I had a job about 4 or 5 days later, and it was just like people I ran into, and Vietnam didn't even exist.
You know, I'd like more than anything. You can give me all the medals there are, but what I would like is somebody that called us names, come up and tell me why, and apologize. Just tell me you're sorry.
They didn't have the help that they do the troops now with the conflicts that we've been in. Basically said, just go home and get on with your life.
Well, for me, I was able to suppress these memories, the bad stuff, and I went back to school right away. Within 10 days after being home, I was back a student at Bemidji State. And at the time, they had a BSC Vets Club on campus. And so there were about 40 of us Vietnam veterans that went back to school. We formed this club, and it was very similar to a fraternity. We had fundraisers for the college, and of course we had parties, and being with these other veterans, war combat veterans, that helped ease their transition into civilian life, so to speak. We would have meetings, and we would talk about our experiences and how we can help each other get our lives back together, and stay in school and support each other. And that was very helpful.
I graduated from St. Cloud State College and a master's degree in social work, and came up to Duluth and started working for St. Louis County Social Service Department. And we were involved in starting the Northland Vietnam Veterans Association, several social workers at the county. And we got a governor's award and everything because it was the first real Vietnam veteran service organization, you know, that was kind of a helping organization, kind of organizing veterans. That was in 79, 80, right in there. And we got the vet center to locate in town. NVVA worked to get the vet center, worked with Senator Boswich, got the vet center located in Duluth, which was a big thing because there's a lot of competition around the state for a location of the vet center. But Senator Boswich really worked hard for us, and we got the vet center here.
So I'm never unhappy that I went in the military, because it really made me grow up. And from the time I entered in the military, or I dropped out of school and entered in the military, did my military commitment, and when I came back to school, I decided to come back to college. College was so much easier for me. It was just a snap. After graduation, I got hired up in Cloquet. I got a teaching job in Cloquet, and we moved there, and we've been there ever since. My wife and I, and we raised our family there, and this is where we're going to stay, in the Northland.
Vietnam veterans are, you know, the Marines they got a good brotherhood, but the Vietnam veterans they've got a good brotherhood too. They're pretty tight, close personnel.
I had 13 co-workers in maintenance up there in different departments that were Vietnam veterans. And you could always tell a Vietnam veteran because they were real conscientious. They did a good job. They were on a mission. They got their jobs done every day, and then never put 2 and 2 together. Nobody knew who. We didn't even know each other until I don't know. My accident precipitated the PTSD. I had a 4,000-pound roll come down on my hand and cut my fingers off and stuff, and all I seen was a rocket coming in.
Later in life, when I became a conservation officer for the state of Minnesota, I had some bad incidents, deer hunting, where I had to load some young people in a body bag again, load them in the ambulance, and that was instant flashback. It was bad, and I guess I've seen enough of the bad things, and having to do that in Vietnam and then do it on civilian life, it's tragic, and it's always going to affect you, and it's affected me, and bad is bad. So.
Well, I still have nightmares, but we have had, you know, lots and lots of traumatic experiences in that 1 year that have stayed with me to this day.
You didn't talk about it for 30 years. You just try to put it behind you, and then I drove truck most of the time alone. So I'd have a lot of times if I had a flashback, there'd be nobody there but me to absorb it. You know what I mean? I worked alone most of the time. And then I had jobs where I had to work with people a couple times, and it didn't turn out real good because I had this anger in me or something.
As men, we always, you know, we don't want to be thought of as being weak because we're taught to be the man. You got to be strong and all that. And so I really didn't seek any help. And again, with that survivor's guilt syndrome, it is. I just thought I could handle it, but you soon find out that it's not so.
And I understand why so many people come back all messed up. You know, the suicide rate is high. So it's just, yeah, and there is, you know, see, I thought I was normal when I came back. You know, I thought, you know, going in the bar and getting a fight was normal. You know, yelling at people every day, normal. And it took me, my wife wanted me to go earlier to the vet center in Duluth, and I refused because I thought there was nothing wrong with me. I just, normal. And I got down and I found out, yeah, no, and I've been going there now for over 17 years.
It didn't bite me until 50 years later. And I didn't know what was going on. I would have flashbacks and anxiety, that type of thing. So, and then I went up to the VA, and I talked to a couple of the therapists up there and found out what it was. So I'm better now, but like I said, anxiety, I don't like crowds. That comes from Saigon, and I get real nervous around fireworks.
Probably the one thing that I've heard in the last 50 years since I was back that really emphasizes the whole thing that I experienced is, I heard it mentioned one time, and I've said it several times, is you never get your soul back.
Probably if the Vietnam vet has done anything for other veterans, it is that we've kind of paved the way home for current veterans, that we don't, if we're upset with what's happened in other places, we're upset with the powers that be. We're not upset with the soldiers themselves. They're just doing their duty. So I look that that's been a positive for us, that we helped other veterans now get home and be treated the way they should be treated. And I'm very proud of that.
When I was in Vietnam, or in the infantry part of it, what they promised us combat infantry badges, but then our MOSs didn't look to qualify. So I went down to a couple of reunions down in San Antonio and down in Lawton, Oklahoma. They had reunions down there. So I went down and took my wife down in 2006, I think it was. And acting with a command sergeant major come up to me when I got there, and he says, "You're getting a medal." I said, "No, I'm not." He says, "You're getting a medal." He says, "You didn't get no infantry badge, which you were promised in Vietnam." And he says, "I have a medal that is artillery only. It's one of the highest artillery medals you can get. It has to be approved by the Department of the Army and the general on post." and it has to be what could put on by a colonel in ranks. I was so embarrassed, so guilty, but I went and done it, and they pinned it on me, and I went, well, it's a little late, but, and when I was driving home, it hit me that somebody recognized what we did in Vietnam.
It's really tough to go to something like that and see the number of bodies that were killed and for no reason, from the way I look at it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, I don't care where it's in DC or because I've been down to that one, or the traveling walls and that. They are, I'll put it the best way I can. It's a hurtful heart. Very strong and emotional. I look at all the names in that. I don't know. I know some of them on the wall, but I look at all the names on that wall there, and I can't help but see us 18, 19, or 20-year-old kids yet.